Hello guys, it's Ryan here with Hobbies of Man once again, and today we're doing another top 5 video. Today we're looking at comics, top 5 comics that I read in 2024. Now, to be clear, these are books that didn't necessarily come out this year, but that I read this year. There's going to be 5 books that I want to mention, and there might be 1 or 2 honorable mentions here and there, just in case I decide to include them, because I do have them planned, but I don't necessarily think that I want to mention them, you know, because it might not be necessary, right? So we'll get around to it when we get around to it. So let's do it backwards, starting at the bottom with number 5 and then moving up to number 1, right? And it doesn't really make too much of a difference. I mean, I like most of these almost equally, but there had to be an order, and so that's what I picked. So at number 5, I will put 2 books because they're basically the exact same like idea. Well, that's not true. They're the exact same team and similar ideas, but a very different kind of plot, if that makes sense. So this is Tom King and Bilquis Evely, and it's Helen of Windhorn and Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. And the reason why I put these together is because I wanted to give them their own spot each. But when I thought about it, I like the same thing for both of them, which is the artwork and the very interesting take on an old school kind of classic pulp formula, right? Helen of Windhorn is a sword and sorcery story. It's also a bit of a gothic story, a bit of a Bronte sisters kind of story. And it follows this young woman, Helen, whose father recently killed himself. And her father was a prolific, wonderful, amazing sword and sorcery writer. It's kind of equal to Robert E. Howard, right? Kind of the equivalent character. And so she has to move to her grandfather's estate. And she learns that her grandfather is the character that her dad wrote about, is the Conan figure in this story. And so now, in this weird gothic manner that she finds herself in, she has to unravel the mystery and join her grandfather on adventures. It almost feels like Narnia a little bit as well. And the greatest part is the artwork. The storytelling is great. I love the pulpy formula, but the fact that Tom King likes to do this back and forth kind of concept is not really my favorite. I don't like that framing device, especially the way that he uses it in Helen of Windhorn. And so I don't really love that part, but I do like the plot that focuses on Helen. And I love the artwork, I like the coloring, I love how this story looks and feels so much. And it's very similar with Supergirl. Supergirl is more of a space adventure kind of story. It's a little bit more like Sword and Sandal, right? Something like John Carter of Mars, or the Tarnsman of Gore, or something like that, right? Some kind of Flash Gordon, you know, early Star Wars concept kind of idea. It follows Supergirl as she goes off into space to get drunk on her 21st birthday and ends up stumbling across a young lady called Ruthie who wants revenge on her father's killer. And so they journey on this odyssey together to go find him, and they chase him down. And it's a really beautiful story. I've read it twice this year. I read it once, and then I didn't get around to doing a review for it, and I thought that I needed to read it again to really appreciate it properly. I've been reading through it again, and I still don't feel ready to do a review for it. I think I need to process it a little bit more, give it a little bit more of a read, and then I'll be able to talk about it properly. And so that's why I haven't reviewed it, but just know that I love it. And I think that Supergirl and Helen of Windhorn are basically 2 sides of the same coin, but with different kind of vibes to them, because that's just kind of what you get out of using a different genre. Either way, Tom King and Bilquis Evely are an amazing team. I hope they continue to work together for the foreseeable future. I can't wait for more of the stories in this universe, right? So that's number 5. Number 4 is Conan the Barbarian by Jim Zub. And specifically, I want to talk about Conan the Barbarian issues. I would say it's 9 through 12, which is the 3rd arc in the story, the 3rd arc in the first year of publication. This is my favorite part of the story so far. There's been 6 arcs at this point that we've released, or that have been released, that I have covered on my channel. And these are the 4 books, the 3rd arc that is the best. I love it. I like that it includes Cole. I love the introduction of the wizard character that Cole always fights against. I can't remember his name right now, but I love it. I really enjoy Rob Del Torre's artwork. I think it's phenomenal. And I really connected with this story a lot. I just really enjoyed it. I got to meet Jim Zub earlier this year. I was going to say last year, but it was still this year. I got to meet Jeff Shanks, who does the essays for that, at Howard Days, which is a little Robert E. Howard event we do here in Texas every year. And I loved it. I thought it was phenomenal. That story is special to me because it was happening as I got to meet these guys, and it's really awesome. So that's why it's here at number 4. At number 3, I will say that I wanted to put Calvin and Hobbes here because even though it's not really a comic book, it's more of a cartoon, right? A Sunday cartoon. The bit of it that I read earlier this year, and I did a review for it, was phenomenal. It was so weird because it was a really childish, simple kind of concept, and yet the way that the creator, I think his name is Will Patterson, right? Bill Patterson, something like that, managed to convey this child and also weave in adult jokes and really ridiculous concepts was phenomenal. It was frankly amazing in a way that I was not expecting. It was something completely out of nowhere, kind of left field, and yet deeply moving and emotional and wonderful. And I keep thinking about the last panels that I read in that book, which are about Calvin and Hobbes finding a bird or an animal of some kind. I can't remember exactly what the animal was that was dying, and that they wanted to help, but its injuries were too great and it still died. And Calvin asking his mother, "Hey, why did this happen?" And the beautiful response that she gave him, and the fact that I've dealt with a lot of family members passing away, right? My grandfather and my dog. Well, that's just it. That's true, but that's more than usual, right? Like I can't remember how many family members died in the last 5 years, maybe 1 or 2. But that's 5 years. That's very different from this year having 2 happen basically back to back, right? And that moment really struck me, and it really mattered to me a lot. And I feel emotional just thinking about it, especially tying it into my own personal experiences this year. So Calvin and Hobbes deserves a spot on this because I read it this year, because I thought it was phenomenal. It was wonderful. It was just so moving and amazing. And it's number 3. Number 2 is ElfQuest, because I was not expecting this to be as awesome as it is. I've only read 5 issues of it. It's the first story arc in the original saga, the original quest, right, which was 20 issues. And I freaking love it, man. It's so cool. It has a very heroic fantasy, sword and sorcery vibe to it, but it's really epic fantasy because it has a secondary world and it follows non-humans and it's very magical. And it just has these really interesting concepts about not belonging and finding a place for yourself and creating a family and being an outcast and not being an outcast, and how you can develop your personal situation into an asset or a negative, depending on how you look at it, how you live your life, right? And also about passion and love and life and so many things, right? I think that the Tinnies, right? The Pinnies, Wendy Pinney and Richard Pinney, right? I think those are their names. Did something immensely wonderful and beautiful with ElfQuest, and I really can't put it into words because it's been a long time since I read this first bit of the story. But I just remember that the artwork was phenomenal, that I loved the storytelling elements, that I liked the themes in it, and that Cutter and the female character from the Sun Village were wonderful and fun. And I don't know, there was this really interesting mix of cuteness and sensuality and ferociousness to these characters that Wendy Pinney just drew phenomenally, right? So ElfQuest is at number 2. At number 1 is Tarzan, The New Adventures. This is a Sunday comic style version of Tarzan that was written by Roy Thomas. And specifically, I want to talk about the first arc by, what's his name? Let me see if I can pull it up here. By Thomas Grinberg. This arc focuses on Tarzan finding Jane in a hidden version of Troy and dealing with Law, who's crazy. And just the artwork in this is phenomenal. The storytelling is great. It was very different from what I'm used to because I think of Tarzan as a novel character, right? And getting to experience him in such a different format was awesome. And Thomas Greenberg's art was just so cool and so distinct and very classic in a way that was just awesome, right? It was very Frazetta-esque. It had this really raw sensuality to it. The characters were very defined and like plump in a way that was very attractive, and the storytelling was really fun. I didn't like the second arc that was in the story that much, like the second arc in the book that much, but that first arc was freaking amazing. It was so cool. It was a Tarzan story that I'd never seen before. That was so wonderful. So yeah, those are my top 5 comics of 2024. I know that I used the same words over and over again. I apologize for that, but hopefully something about what I said helps you guys get interested in these series, right? If you want me to give you one that you probably would like, it just kind of a random, this is very broad. I think everyone should read Calvin and Hobbes. And, probably everyone should also read ElfQuest. The other ones you can take or leave depending on your interest in the genres, right? So, yeah, there you go. That's my top 5 comics of 2024. Let me know what you read this year. What were your top 5 comics of 2024? What was your favorite one? Like all of the ones that you read this year, all of the 5 that you mentioned, which one is the one that you would recommend that I read the most? Let me know down in the comments, and thank you guys so much for watching, and see you guys later.